morning, everybody. Oh, good afternoon, sorry. My name is Wasim El-Omari. I'm a distinguished security architect and field CTO at Snowflake. And it's a pleasure to be here in South Korea. I haven't visited South Korea for more than 15 years. And I'm truly amazed about the development in this country and how this country has progressed from a technology standpoint. And thank you for welcoming me here and being hospitable and having me at your conference. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a technology platform and capability at Snowflake called Snowflake Horizon. For many of us that have worked in information security, and I've been in information security for more than 25 years, we've seen security always playing this game of catching up and following the next technology trend. And a lot of data owners have typically not been concerned about the security implementation, and they have left it to their security colleagues and counterparts in the organization to deal with the security difficulties. What we're going to be talking about today is how Snowflake has built an all-encompassing security and governance capability that covers every aspect of your usage in Snowflake, which is under the program of Snowflake Horizon. So I'm based in Australia, but I have the great job of covering the entire Snowflake global business. And I spend a lot of my time here in the Asia-Pacific region meeting with lots of customers. And one of my jobs is to talk to our customers about building successful security programs. And some of the things I want you to walk away from in this session is how you can implement some of these controls to give you better security control over your data. We have a very brief agenda, and I'm going to try and cover as much detail as I can without talking too fast, so that those of you that are listening to this in the Korean language, you can grasp the meaning, the most important meanings from this session. This is a very common slide you'll see at Snowflake, which is the Snowflake model of services. And many of you are familiar with this, and many of you are a customer of ours, and you'll be aware of this sort of architecture, this shell architecture. And this is very common as well in information security. Because information security, we have this defense in depth model with so many layers of security to protect your data, to protect your assets. So we're going to be talking about that today. I guess one of the scariest points in technology that we are in is this generation of generative AI or enterprise AI for a lot of our customers. In fact, it is moving so fast that security practitioners and security companies are building new mechanisms to protect against unknown security threats in the generative AI space. Many of us are starting to use generative AI and enjoy the benefits of using the technology. But then there's the other side of, well, how do we protect our organization from some of the unknown dangers that exist in these systems that we don't control? So we're going to be looking at what those opportunities are and how we can help you from a Snowflake perspective. In a survey that was conducted by Salesforce, over 55% of the respondents stated that their number one concern is the security of enterprise or generative AI platforms. So the business is pushing them to use artificial intelligence to help optimize and augment their organizations. But the security teams are slightly nervous about what they need to do to protect because they don't have absolute control over these environments. And so we're going to talk about some of those factors today. If we take a look at Snowflake and we break Snowflake down into its many layers, one of the important considerations for any of us that are using Snowflake is to understand that security and governance goes across all of the capabilities at Snowflake. That includes data engineering, the traditional SQL and database core platform, AI, ML, and applications. And this you will see across all of the platform that security has a play in each one of those aspects of the technology. What we're going to be covering off is this program called Horizon, and Horizon consists of 5 main domains. We're going to go through each of these, but we're going to look at them through slightly different lenses. And the lenses that we're going to look at are the two different teams that would exist in a company. So on the left-hand side, you see what we call the data governor or the steward. These are the people that are responsible for making policy decisions. They decide whether or not the company can use this service or apply this policy. And then you have the data team, which is the operational team, the ones that configure and make the decisions and perform the actions on the platform. And so each of these have different responsibilities, but they work together. So let's take a look at the data governor or the data steward and what they would use Snowflake Horizon for. So there are many requirements that come from different types of data stewards and governors. If you are working in a bank or in a manufacturing company, or if you work for the government, or if you work in a retail organization, the requirements are broadly similar, but there are individual industry-specific requirements that might differ. For example, how do you handle sensitive information about your citizens? How do you store credit card records? How do you deal with cross-border transactions? These are all policy decisions that data governors and stewards need to write policies for and ultimately implement in the technology. First, we're going to look at compliance. And compliance is a very, very broad area, but one of the things that I want to focus on in this session are the practical capabilities that you can go and utilize in your Snowflake environment when you finish this session. And the first one is about data quality. So a lot of the time when customers consume data, they often have to go back and try and clean up the data and make sure that the data is usable. So if the data has corruption in it, or if the data is not meaningful for the organization, then that causes a big problem. And so in Snowflake, we have this capability called data quality monitoring, where as a data team, you can check whether the data is clean, it has the right values, is it sitting within a particular range? And so think about when you're collecting lots of data from your systems, you want to be able to automate the data cleaning process, and this is known as data quality monitoring, available in Snowflake. Also, from a compliance perspective, is to understand the relationship between data objects as you change them. You take one table and you create another table from that table, and then you create some kind of a view of that table. All of these objects are all related to each other. And so as a data compliance officer, you want to ensure that you maintain the hierarchy and the relationship between all of those data objects so that you don't have things just sitting in your organization that have no accountability. And so data lineage helps you visualize the relationships between all the data objects in your Snowflake environment. We also have that capability for ML assets. So if you are building models and training models and tuning models, you also want to be able to track the relationship between a parent and a child model, between a tuned model, and so forth and so forth. And so now this is completely visualized inside of the Snowflake environment for you. As we get to security, many of us are familiar with the shared responsibility model between a customer and a product vendor. There are certain things you need to do as a customer, and there are certain things that the vendor needs to do, and you come together in this agreement called shared responsibility. So we have a very, very well detailed shared responsibility model with our vendors and partners as well, such as AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. And we all understand whose role it is to secure what part of the infrastructure. But our customers also need to play a role in implementing the security policies. Just because our security platforms are well tested, it doesn't mean that your account is going to be entirely secure if you do not implement the right practices. And so this is something, for example, at Snowflake that we do by default. All data in Snowflake, in transit or at rest, is always encrypted. And this is really important for the protection and integrity of data. Similarly, the role-based access model. The role-based access model gives you flexibility and control over what objects get to be accessed by what individuals or roles or groups. And so this is also very important when you build different access models to your data. And recently, Snowflake released its support for the CIS benchmark, foundational benchmark, where now inside of your Snowflake account, you can audit your Snowflake configuration against the foundational baseline of CIS Top 20 to check your security posture and see whether or not you have best practices implemented in your account or whether you are deviating from those best practices. This is a program called Trust Center. And what Trust Center does is it is an automated capability in your account that scans through your account configuration and tells you whether or not you have high severity, medium severity, or low severity security problems that you should address. For example, are you using weak passwords? Are you not rotating your passwords? Do you have multi-factor authentication turned on? And so forth and so forth. And this becomes a constant compliance check that you should be running in the background so you improve your security across all of your Snowflake environment. If we actually look at the protection mechanisms many of us are familiar with, protecting the data inside of the table, column level security, row level security, dynamic masking, these are all capabilities to protect access to the data from users or consumers of that data. And so these are features and capabilities that are all available today, and you should be applying them on your data assets. If we start looking at privacy, one of the big things when you work in large collaborative industries is how organizations share data. Some organizations, conglomerates, are made up of multiple businesses, and they need to share information securely. And so with collaboration, we have these concepts of a data clean room. And a clean room is completely automated inside of Snowflake, where two parties can share and use each other's data without revealing the nature of the data itself. And so this is a really important capability working between different industries. I'll give you an example. If you are a telecommunications company and you collect data about your subscribers, you know, a lot of information, GPS information, IP address information, purchasing, all of these things, so many things on your mobile phone. And you work with a media or ad tech company that is trying to sell advertising online through social media. This entity and this entity have a shared interest. The consumer, they want to be able to talk to their consumer, but they do not trust each other. So how do you work with each other without necessarily trusting each other? That's what a data clean room is, being able to share without implicit trust. And as we look at access, there is a fully fledged data governance workspace in Snowflake that shows you everything you need to operate data governance through a user interface. You don't need to be a technical software developer or SQL administrator to apply governance in Snowflake. So the data governance team can go into the user interface, have a look at their assets, classify them, apply the policies, and they don't even need to write a single line of code. And this is really important for data teams. One of the key capabilities that our customers are asking for is the ability to classify and tag their data. So here we have this concept of tag propagation. If I tag my data with a sensitivity level, highly sensitive, low sensitivity, I want the tags to be able to follow the data. So if I take an initial table or database and I create a second object out of it, I want the classification to follow the data. I don't want to have to continuously touch the data so many times. And speaking of classification, in your hundreds and billions of table records, wouldn't it be advantageous to allow the system to tell you where your sensitive data is? Mobile number, email address, credit card number, national ID number, for example, passport number. Classify and apply a tag value so you don't have to discover it yourself. This is something that is also available as a part of auto-classification, and it is based on specific languages today. However, there is more support coming for other languages. We also have Object Insights, which is a part of the governance program in Horizon, which shows you all of the objects, tables, databases, views, roles, everything at your disposal in one panel that you don't need to look in so many places for. And just to make it even easier, AI capabilities to automate the comments and the descriptions of all of your objects, so you do not have to go and try and understand what it is. By applying the AI capability, it will automatically provide the comments and the descriptions for you, so it is easier to read and easier to collaborate. Now let's take a look at interoperability. In the keynote this morning, if you attended the keynote this morning, you would have heard of the strategy around open table formats, so Apache Iceberg support, where you can have your tables sitting in your own cloud storage, such as an S3 bucket or a blob storage or a Google storage container, and being able to use Snowflake to read and write to those tables. Well, Snowflake also has this catalog, which was an open source project known as Polaris, that allows you to govern and manage those objects when you have them sitting outside of your Snowflake storage environment. And as we move away from those policy and governance team strategy concepts, we now move into the data team strategies, which are the team that actually operate the data environment. And the things that are important here are how you can perform your job in a more efficient way without having to continuously load and unload data. And you want to be able to do everything in a fast and efficient manner without having to contact too many people. And so we're going to look at some of these capabilities. So from a compliance perspective, a couple of these examples I'm showing you here are sort of the latest and sort of state-of-the-art features. Something called Studio Analytics. So if you are sharing data, you want to understand who is using your data, who is subscribing, how many subscribers you have, having a look at the usage, and doing that in an interface where you can track the consumption of your data. So if you are an organization that is selling or sharing data, this is something for you. From a privacy perspective, it's really important to use technologies to apply very strict privacy on data that is sensitive. And we're going to look at some examples here. One of the big problems that exists, particularly with working with data science teams, is a data science team needs a lot of data to build and train models. So often they will ask for access to all the data to be able to successfully build an efficient model. And the data teams are a little bit nervous in giving them access to all of the sensitive data. So we can use something called differential privacy. And what differential privacy is the ability to insert synthetic data to create noise in the data set such that you can build the model without having to expose the details of the data. So there is enough integrity in the data for a model to learn and be efficient, but there's enough hiding or obfuscation of the detail of the data by inserting synthetic noise. And this is what differential privacy is. So we have some examples of this. For example, in Snowflake, you can generate synthetic data sets and you can insert that into the data set such that anyone who is going to use them is not going to be able to infer all of those individual values, because that's something that you don't necessarily want to give everyone access to. Even though they are trusted, there may be sensitive data sets that you simply just don't want to hand over. Now, in terms of access, let's take a look at some of the capabilities that allows a data team to securely provide access to the data. So the first one is what's known as an internal marketplace. So one of the challenges a large organization has is controlling how they give access to their data to different business units inside of the company. So for example, if the HR team have their own data people, and the finance people have their own data people, and the sister company has their own data people, how do you create an ecosystem where you don't need to give everyone full administrative privilege to the raw data, where you can create your own marketplace? It's kind of like having your own Amazon marketplace or eBay store of data where you can actually create it and list it, and people internally can come and consume it, but you get to control who gets to access it and what they get to see from your data by providing it as a data set. And this is something you can do inside of your own organization. It's known as an internal marketplace. One of the other really important capabilities is universal search. How many times have you looked through all of your data objects and tried to figure out where something is? Where is that table? Where does that particular role belong? You created a view or you created a new schema and you don't know where it exists in the estate of all the data because you've got hundreds and thousands of tables. So why not just search for it and put some keywords in, and it will give you the results and tell you where it is. And being able to do that right across all of the data to be able to identify where everything is a very powerful capability. Similarly, if you are going to be putting things on the marketplace or sharing data sets, maybe you want to interact with that data in a programmatic way. So as a developer, if you wanted to utilize the listing API, you could call the API and revoke a data set or upload a new data set, because maybe you want to automate that process in your development pipeline as to how you control the sharing and the access of data. And then finally, if we look at the marketplace, and this is something that is different from region to region, but the marketplace is an amazing capability that holds not only data sets, but applications. So there are many vendors in the marketplace that sell their apps to the rest of the Snowflake consumer base. So if you're a tech company or you're a company that is dealing with, specific data sets, you can productize and monetize the data set. So I've worked very closely with a number of cybersecurity startups, and they have built products and published them in the marketplace that allows a customer to simply click and provision and have that security product running directly in their Snowflake environment. And so now this concept of the app store or the marketplace for either your internal use or for you to be able to consume someone's product or you to create your own products is all now available through the same construct. Folks, I conclude the session with a very, very simple ask. Ask each one of you to take a look at how you currently manage your security and governance. Do you need to engage 4 or 5 different people or teams in order to build a governance program? Where are you in your journey in terms of governance? Some organizations are very advanced. They have a very well documented and very well structured process. Some organizations are just starting off. So regardless of where you are in your journey, you always need to start with visibility first. You need to understand what it is that's happening inside of your data environment. So for those of you that haven't worked with Horizon yet, I encourage you to go and enable some of those dashboards. Start off by using visibility, understanding where your data products and assets sit. Use technologies like Trust Center to audit your account and see where you are from a best practices perspective. And then gradually build your security and governance program. Maybe you will start off with role-based access first, and then you will look at maybe tagging the data first after that. And then as you get more and more comfortable in governing and protecting your data, you start to look at some of those more advanced capabilities. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the session. Again, Snowflake Horizon, please go into your environments. Any of you that are Snowflake customers, you will have access to this. Any of you that aren't Snowflake customers, I encourage you to get an environment, start it up, and start looking at these capabilities. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the Snowflake tour. Thank you.